Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Noha Hefni, the co-founder of She's Arab, and today's topic is going to be the power of storytelling in overcoming adversity. And I couldn't be more pleased today to be joined here by two power women, inspirational speakers who have either used storytelling in their own lives to tell their own stories or have actually documented the stories of others in order to inspire hundreds and thousands of people. So I have here with me Mariam Farag, the head of CSR at MBC Group, the founder of MBC Hope brand. She is an expert in social impact, in media for impact, and in youth development. We're so happy to have you here, Mariam, today. And I also have Lara Bint Bassam. She is the founder of Life Talks with Lara. She's also a writer and a diversity and inclusiveness consultant at Ernst & Young. So thank you so much for being here. And as we all know, stories have the power, to give us courage, to give us empathy, to give us perseverance. And so we can't wait to hear what you have to say about the art of storytelling. And so before handing over to Mariam, I'd like to share some housekeeping rules. So if anyone has a question, please feel free to write it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Or if you'd like to share your question live, please use the raise your hand button in the chat box. So thank you very much, and over to you, Mariam.
Thank you, Noha. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Ramadan Kareem. Hi, Lara. I'm very, very happy to be with She is Arab today, with amazing, inspiring women, and to be moderating this very powerful session because I truly believe in the power of storytelling. Today, I would like to share with you a few insights on a professional level and on a personal level and from an industry level as well. So I have 20 minutes just to share with you some insights, but I wanted to start first by sharing a few insights and statistics and data on the science of storytelling. Why is storytelling so powerful? And why have brands and media and the industry particularly for consumers and consumption has been using storytelling in so many ways to generate revenues, to sell their products and make money, obviously. So there was a study back a couple of years ago by a company, PQ Media, that I believe resides in Europe. And basically they said that $10.5 billion is turned over on product placement, or as we like to call in the media industry, as brand integration every year by consumers. This is a revenue made by consumers buying products that are integrated within a story. It's a $10.5 billion revenue. Now, why does it work? It works because there is a science behind it. There is an emotional investment. I'll tell you how. I'll give you an example. So one of them gave the example of movies. If we look at the media, TV, filmmaking, brands, how they integrate their brands within a movie or within a commercial, an ad, or within a program, it's huge. Imagine this, you're watching perhaps James Bond. And James Bond is very heroic, he's strong, he's a wanted man from the ladies. He's sexy, but he's also very smart and he's sharp. Everyone in the audience would affiliate somehow with Bond. They want to be like Bond. They want to be that kind of personality. So Bond is wearing an Omega watch in the movie. So someone would actually resonate with that person and say, hey, after that movie, I feel great. I want to be like Bond. They would go out, they would go to the mall, search for something that would make them feel good. They accidentally see the watch of Bond and they buy it. And that's how brands make money through stories. Now, imagine this, something else, another movie or another film or another TV series or drama or an ad, and you see yourself in that person and you want to be that person. So you would go out and buy that shoe or buy that bag or that cereal because it looks like you can be a great football player at the age of 5 if you just eat the cereal. So storytelling is not just about telling our stories. It's taken from a completely different angle. From a science point of view, brands actually strive on that. The media strives on that. Filmmaking and so on. Avengers, Superwoman, Superman, Wonder Woman, we all want to be these people. And so we go out and shout, how can we be this person? And most of the time it's through brands. Now, what does it do, the science? The science injects a lot of hormones. One of them is dopamine. It makes you feel good. And when you feel good about a story, or when you feel good about a character, you want to be that character. It motivates you, it inspires you, it energizes you, and it gives you hope. So it's not necessarily something bad that's being used by brands or by advertising or by film. It's actually something good as well, because it gives you a sense of that you're happy. Because when you resonate with a story, science-wise, it gives you that emotional feeling, it resonates in your mind, and then you start feeling that you actually can change the world. You can actually go out there and change your world. And we've seen so many stories that inspired so many people recently and before. But also storytelling is being used in media and film for the longest time to change public opinion and to change mindsets and to change things that are wrong and try to make it right. We see in a lot of movies, laws have been changed, public opinion pushed for something to change, politics changed, the socioeconomic development or status has changed. So storytelling has always been for years a change maker or a change agent. And imagine if it actually creates $10.5 billion revenue in brand integration. Imagine if storytelling is used to change the world for good, is used to inspire people to do good. Now, I'll take you from the science perspective, the brand advertising, media, TV perspective, film, and that's just barely in a nutshell because I don't have enough time, to an individual story. How do individuals do? So Maya Angelou, one of the people that inspires me the most, she said, there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. So throughout my career and throughout my 20 years of experience, and mainly recently with the media, I am always asked to speak in events and conferences, nowadays in webinars and so on. And I was always reluctant to use my story. I was always using the story of how did I get to where I am? How did I start on my humanitarian career? Where did I go from here to there? Public sector to private sector and so on. And how to inspire young females to become who they want to be and to use your voice. Because when you use your voice, it's powerful. Your story is your power. But I was always reluctant to use my personal story. First, I felt, believe it or not, shy and embarrassed, although I can speak in front of thousands of people, but I felt that my story is not really important. How will it change someone's life? How is it significant? They want to listen to Mariam who did something professionally. They don't want to listen to me on a personal level. But there was a turn of events. In 2018, I was invited to speak at an event called She Can. It's an event that was founded by a young lady called Rania Ayman, whom I have mentored and have seen her grow throughout. She founded something called Entrepreneur to help women and young girls aspire to be who they want to be and chase their dreams. And she created this event that is called She Can for women and even men to share inspiring stories about the ladies they know or themselves or something that would inspire other ladies. And I found myself thinking, what am I going to talk about in an event like that? And I realized that I needed to tell my personal story. And for the first time, I stood on that stage and told my story, how I was raised without my dad and how it was very difficult for me growing up without my father being around as a child and as an adolescent and then as growing up. And it was really an emotional roller coaster and going back and forth between love and hate relationship, and how I was raised by a fantastic, strong and resilient single mom, and how it was not easy on her, but yet she managed to raise us 3 siblings strongly without having to make us ever feel that we lacked anything. And she made us feel that we could, reach for the stars. So I wanted to share my humble story with the audience, because I wanted the girls there, young females, and even the women, to understand that although sometimes I would seem accomplished and I have a lot of achievements and so on and so forth, and I've reached a certain level or a certain executive senior leadership role, is that it was never easy, and that I'm a normal person and I have my ups and downs and I have my failures more than my success. Now, after sharing my story, the result was huge, because instead of standing on that stage talking about my achievements and my roles in life and how I made it from the UN to the government to academia to media and how I achieved everything, I was talking about my soul. I was talking about the real me. I was talking about Mariam, not Mariam the wife or the employee or the individual or the mother or the sister or the daughter. I was talking about Mariam, just Mariam. And I realized that there were so many women and young females in the audience that shared my story or a small aspect of it. The story of my mother resonated a lot with them. There were a lot of single moms in the audience, a lot of girls that were raised without 1 or 2 or without parents at all. There were, so basically in a nutshell, a lot of girls and a lot of women came up to me after I went off stage, and they said, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, because it made us feel that you are not, you're not superwoman, that anyone can go through so many things and still rise and still succeed. We feel that now one of the ladies that really touched me the most was a lady who had just gotten divorced, and she had a son with autism. And she came and told me, now I understand, and I believe that I can do it alone, and that I'm not alone. And if your mother did it back in the 70s and the 80s, when divorce was a taboo, and she was a single mom, an entrepreneur, had no idea about business, had no backing whatsoever, but she made it and she raised people like you, then I can do it, and I can do it alone. And she's a mother of, a child with autism. It's not easy. So that's when I realized, wow, oh my God, I by sharing my story that is very humble and not heroic. I mean, there's so many people that went through more difficult times than me, but I managed to change a few people. And at the beginning, we were talking before the session, we said, if we are able to inspire one person today out of all the people that are listening to this webinar, we've succeeded. So that's when I realized that it's actually selfish not to share my story. And it's actually selfish not to share my fears more than my success, to share my weakness and my vulnerability more than my strength, because that's when others will realize that they're not alone. Now, that was back in 2018. And whenever I get a chance to talk about my story and to inspire other women, I'm no longer shy. And I'm very proud to share it, because I feel that I could really, change someone's life. During COVID-19 and during this crazy world that we're living in, a lot of changes have happened to me as well. One of them is that my mom had a stroke, a brain stroke, on March 16th. And on March 19th, there was a lockdown. They closed the airport in Cairo, and they closed the airport here in Dubai. So I managed, luckily, alhamdulillah, to go down only for literally less even than 24 hours and to see my mother. Now, imagine this. My mom was the person who raised me. She was my rock, my mountain. And I was telling Lara a few days ago that whenever I feel down, whenever I feel doubts and I doubt myself, or whenever I have something, you know, that I need to decide on, I just naturally pick up the phone and speak to my mother. And even if she doesn't give me a solution, just by hearing her voice, I feel better. Now, with her brain stroke, that wasn't possible. And so I found myself locked down. My husband is stuck in Portugal. He went to see his mother before the lockdown, got stuck there. So I'm here with two boys, without my husband, without their father. My mother is in her situation. I cannot go see her. I can only sometimes speak to her on the phone because she's not able to speak, because she's half paralyzed and her mind goes and comes. And I realized that my rock and my mountain is no longer there, and she needs me. So I realized, okay, a lot of people are literally within that situation. With COVID-19, we're all locked down. We're all losing hope. We're all losing optimism. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in a couple of months. So I felt from panic attack to anxiety to somewhat depression, because everything was just happening and locking down on me like this. And I said, okay, what's going on? Let's see how can I get myself out of this? And I realized that by telling other people's stories, other people who are locked down somewhere far away from their families, perhaps have a story to tell. And I launched something called Human to Human on Instagram and on LinkedIn. And I started asking my network, just my friends and my family members and a few people from the field, do you know anyone that is locked down away from their family during this time? And do you know anyone that has a story of pain, but also of strength that they want to share? And stories just started coming in, flowing from New York, from Australia, from Canada, from China, from Singapore, from Egypt, from Jordan, from Lebanon. And I started getting so many stories, and I started sharing the stories. And what happened here is that instead of sitting down worrying about my life and what's going to happen to me, and agonizing over my mom's situation and not being able to be with her, and dealing with homeschooling for the first time and all of that, I put my mind and my energy into telling other people's stories. And what happened here was amazing, because instead of sitting down panicking and going through anxiety attacks, I'm getting dopamine in me from telling other people's stories and from writing them and from reading them. And what I saw is that it did the same effect to others, is that when they're locked down at home, maybe someone lost their job, someone got a pay cut, they don't know what's going on. Maybe someone that you know, and many of them that some of my friends have lost their lives to Corona. So everybody was going through challenges in their lives, and it was really ups and downs, and even till now. But reading someone's story and thinking, oh, I'm not alone. Oh, I'm not locked down, you know, away from my family alone. There's so many students locked down in the UK alone, and they don't know what to do, and they're scared and they're vulnerable. Let me reach out to them. So instead of having to sit down and be selfish about our issues, we started feeling each other's pain, but also each other's positivity. And so the energy started changing bit by bit. I also realized that by posting some of gratitude messages on Instagram also helps. So I started these series of gratitude. So today I'm grateful for. And then I would ask others to say, what are you grateful for today? Because with everything that's happening around us, and with all the challenges, and I'm sure Lara will share with us now her challenges and her pain, and how she turned her pain into strength as well, is that we sometimes need someone to push us to be inspired. But telling a story is not just about transforming your details to an audience or information onto a LinkedIn page or an Instagram. A story needs to be genuine. A story needs to be from the heart. It needs to be real. And this is something that I always tell people when I give workshops or sessions on storytelling, the power of storytelling. Where is the power? The power is your reality, your genuine perspective towards your story. You're actually stripping yourself in front of someone and making them understand that you're vulnerable and them seeing you as vulnerable. So what I learned from 2018 until now is that when I tell my story, I need to be real, and I need to be out there, and I don't need to look or portray myself as strong all the time. You know what? Because it's not human. And when you see things and posts on Instagram that shows you the perfect family or the perfect couple or the perfect child or whatever, this is not real, because life is not about that. So this is just a nutshell of my story, and just how my take and my insights on storytelling. But I want to talk more about Lara, because Lara is a big example of how you can actually take your pain and take your experience and your challenge and try to inspire others instead of growing into the pain. You outgrow that pain with strength. Lara, it's an absolute pleasure to be your moderator today. I've moderated so many sessions before in my life, but today this is a topic that is very close to my heart, storytelling, but also because we've shared a moment, and I felt that our hearts connected, like the painting that you have behind you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mariam. There's something called the multiplication of courage, and it's something that Nelson Mandela came up with, and it's basically what you're doing now when you share your story with us and you open up and you show your strength and vulnerabilities and weaknesses, whatever it is. You're being you, you're real. You show me that I can do the same, and in return that gives me enough courage to do this as well. It's not easy thinking, what is your story? And growing up at the age of 17, I think that was the question I had for myself. I would say, I would just ask myself, like, what is my story? Everyone has a story. What on earth is mine? I'm just 17. Nothing really major happened to me, let's say, other than heartbreak and typical things like that. But then something weird happened. I finished university, I got into my career. And then one of the first conferences that I attended was the Women in Leadership Conference. And there was one woman on the stage who was, who really stood out to me, because she was the one who was talking about her parents, not about the topic, but she was talking about her parents and her mother in specific, and what her parents did for her and how they pushed her and inspired her. Despite losing them, she was on that stage. And so I remember going outside of that room, and then when I saw her, I connected with her. And then she told me, listen, you need to be ready to lose your parents at any time. And this is me at 21, so 2 years ago. And that was so shocking to me, because no one had ever said that to me before. No one had ever presented really their story on a stage like that, and then came out and told someone younger or still in their career that, listen, life is hard, and you need to open your eyes, and you need to be ready for when that day comes. So I wrote about this a few years back, 2 years back, and I said, how could you ever be ready for such a moment? And so growing up and thinking what my story was and doing well in my career, one day I decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, And that was probably one of the most interesting things that I've had to do in my life, because I traveled to Tanzania. I worked so hard to prepare for that journey. And then it's just the mental state that you have to be in. I was physically not well over there, and I kept pushing. And one of the porters actually told me the story of an older woman who made it to the top. She was at 70 years old, and he was like, she did it, and so you can do it. And so even on the mountain, I was encountering stories of inspiration, and that story of the woman just didn't let me give up, and they would call me Queen Simba and be like all motivational, you know. It was really intense and fun. But then the night I came back from Kilimanjaro and I succeeded, my life turned around. So my parents had flown that day, and they basically told us that my father had pancreatic cancer stage 4. And I was in such a strong place then, but it took me 5 minutes until the breakdown started. And my whole world had changed so drastically, and I was in a different world. I was like between clouds with you know, people telling me about Simba and all these stories, and just you wonder sometimes, what do you do when your whole world flips in a second? Because it very much can. And so at that moment you realize that you're presented with a choice. As you said, when your mother, you know, she got that stroke at March 16, that date was probably for you like, okay, this is when my world has flipped, and what should I do about this? So I took on the battle, I think, courageously, and I told myself I had to fly out directly with my parents so that my father can start, and I had to be there for him in his first chemotherapy session. And so that's what the next few months were like for me then. Going to hospitals, being there at chemo sessions. I remember telling him, Dad, you're strong, you're a fighter, you can do this. And my father would literally like tear up then and there and say, my daughter is basically looking at me like I'm a fighter. And that made him cry, because I think that was the moment where he realized the roles have reversed, and that his 22-year-old daughter was right there with the chemo, and just, you know, saying all the positive things that come to her mind. And so during those few months, I was very creative on Instagram. I used to come up with stories, and no one, Mariam, understood what on earth I was doing, because the first few months I barely told anyone. The family wanted, you know, its privacy, wanted to just keep it on the down low. And I would create Instagram stories where I would combine pictures and words. And so that was my survival strategy. I was reading a lot of books. I was from looking at stories like Coco Chanel, who went through drastic things in her life and still made it. I was looking at how people created narratives of their lives so that they can basically come up with a story of hope. And how did they do that? And no one understood why I was posting these things. They were literally asking some of my closest friends, is Lara okay? What's she going through? What's happening? And no one really understood me then. And I don't think that I wanted to be understood, because I was angry. I was going through something that I didn't even understand myself. But stories saved me. The creation of stories saved me. And so well, when it happened eventually, when my father lost the battle in June, I had experienced heartbreak like never before, because he was the person who would always encourage me. And I think it's quite different when you understand what that's like. You said, you know, you felt your world was shaken when that happened to your mother, and I could relate to that, because when I lost him, I felt like the ground beneath me was removed. But you know, what was interesting about my father is that he basically taught me and my siblings lessons enough for us to be able to survive without him. And I think that's the wisdom. I mean, if we have someone that we look at right now and we say we cannot live without them, then I think we need to rethink some things. We need to think in terms of reality. If there is someone you look at and you say, I cannot live without them, then we need a reality check. Because ever since I was a child, my greatest fear was losing my parents. And then as an 8-year-old or 7-year-old, my solution was that I would pray. You know, and if I prayed, then it would all be okay. But then the real world doesn't work like that. You know, we pray despite the pain, even with the loss, we pray. So the greatest thing he did was to teach me how to live without him, and by giving me, you know, the encouragement, the trust in myself, the belief in myself. And so I think that's some of the greatest advice he's given me. And now when I look at the people that I love, I really try to instill with them the courage, the bravery they need for themselves so that they can stand on their 2 feet if I leave. You know what I mean? And it's so hard to say, and it's even harder to go through it. But that's the reason I'm surviving right now. That's the reason that I can go out there and feel like I can do with the world what I want to do. It's so important to share with women our stories, and men as well. Because a lot of people, you don't know what you can do with words of encouragement. You don't know how you can change a life. How some people are probably also suicidal in these times, especially, right, with a heightened anxiety. Like, there is this continuous question about the meaning of life. And when I was going through my father's journey, I had such anticipatory grief that I was continuously setting up myself to be the strong person at the funeral. That was something that helped me to keep going, because, you know, I promised him that I'd take care of my mother. And eventually I had to set up my mindset to become that person who could be strong at the funeral. And that's something that is not commonly, you know, done by, let's say, a 22-year-old, but it can be done. I think many people nowadays, they want to hear about their capability, responsibility. They want to see people like us who go out there and say, you know, this happened to us and it's hard, but you can do it. You can bear that pain, but it's not easy. You know, carrying that new weight and learning how to carry it every day of your life. It wasn't an easy journey. Until now, it's not an easy journey for me, Mariam. Honestly, during the time, I'm probably in one of the deepest or most difficult, darkest times since it happened. But then I told myself that I needed to go out here and I needed to come out and do this, because life doesn't pause. Life didn't pause for me to get better. It just kept on going. I had so many changes this year. I changed my career. I lost many of my friends who weren't there for me. I basically also, and then COVID happened. And then, like you said, it's like the world is getting smaller, and then you're
everything comes together at the same time.
Yeah.
And when we were having our chat a few days ago, you know, I was basically telling you that everything happened to me at the same time, but we were also saying that there's a reason why everything happens at the same time, because you need to grow somehow. The person that is in touch with themselves and in touch with their emotions the most, and actually the one that's strong enough to be vulnerable, you see, strong enough to be vulnerable, are the ones that are going to grow out of it. Lara, I have a question for you, because I want to understand, and I want the audience to understand.
Yeah.
When you started sharing those posts, and we can see them on screen, and they're very powerful and they're very descriptive, and you know, you can just look at a picture and you know, it says so many words. how did you feel? What did that make you feel when you started sharing, you know, the posts and the stories, and you started, you know, the series of talks with Lara? Can you share with us the transition of how you felt?
Sure. So the honest answer is I was such in a broken place, and I didn't have anyone around me who really went through it, or I can really learn from, or someone who can really relate to me. I didn't have that. And so what I did was just, I needed to make myself strong through these stories of hope. So pictures that said, you know, words like, I'm bombarded yet I stand, I've been standing my whole life. And honestly, you don't need anyone to get the stars for you. And if your light falls out of your mouth, pick it up and put it back. These are all things like that are giving me hope that I can get out of this. And all I needed was to have some strength for my family. Because when someone's going through cancer, it's a mind game, it's a mental game. And so I felt like I couldn't really, I had to survive. I was in survival mode. So all these words were the words that a broken person needed to hear. And so I had people like telling me when the funeral came, when people started to understand what I've been talking about for the past 7 months, everyone came back and said, we were so inspired by all of these. We screenshotted these, we have these on our phones. And I was just shocked about what I did. I didn't even talk to people. I just posted these. And people came back saying, we are so inspired and now we understand what you did. And the transition with Life Talks was, growing up, I had these conversations with my father, and he would call them Life Talks, and he would challenge me. He would challenge me on the beauty of women. And he was saying, you know, if you didn't think you were pretty, would you be confident enough? And I said, no. I was asked that question at 16, and it was quite embarrassing. But, you know, the answer was no, because of the whole social media, because of the insecurity that you have generally. You know, as a woman, it's difficult in society because there is much more, I think, focus on our looks rather than our mind relative to men, you know? And so he would question me about all of these things. And so I continued with this platform. I first launched a video before anything happened in October 2018, before Kilimanjaro. And I remember him being on the phone with me, and he said, this is going to open a lot of doors for you. And he could see it. Look at where we are right now, you know, almost 2 years in, and that's crazy. And he could see it, and he knew me. And the thing is, my father could see me before the world did. And I'm sure your mother, you know, has always seen you before the world did. And I think that's what humbles me. I don't forget where I came from. I don't forget my pain. I don't forget where I've been through. You know, that's what makes me who I am, and I'm not ashamed of it. And I come out here and I speak of these things because I want women and men to come out and feel like they are not less than anyone else when they constantly do these things. Because like you said, people in leadership, we always think they're perfect. We always think they're superhuman. But then if you get close to them and you listen to their stories, you're like, oh my God, this person is just like me, with the pain, with the struggle, with the joy, with the happiness, with the perseverance. And so that's why we read. That's why I'm obsessed with reading. All I did in that phase was read, because I needed answers no one could give me. I was searching for answers, you know. And so I was striving for the most honorable thing, which was to be there for them at the end of their lives, because, you know, he was there for me whenever I needed him. And the most honorable thing for me then was to be by his side, and I was. And that gives me a lot of perspective of life right now, is that, you know, again, with the whole I can't live without you, we need to, as hard as it is, we need to rethink about that.
Absolutely.
Because when the roles shift, you want to be the person who can carry them. And the roles will shift eventually, right? It's time. It's time in this life.
The roles shift overnight. That's
Yes.
a fact.
Yes.
And you wouldn't even think. I mean, for me, for example, I never ever, like, I always felt that my mother was Wonder Woman. Nothing ever could happen to her. You know, she's always been my rock, my mountain, and I always was or always were the little girl that goes to mommy. You know what I mean? For advice, for the next move, for the shift, for what do you think I should cook today, or anything small or big. I went to my mom. And I was always the little girl in front of her. And when things happened, I you know, and I was telling you this, Lara, I kind of like went, what? Like I went into shock mode because I had no idea. Oh, okay, so what now? You know, and the roles have shifted completely overnight. So now, instead of calling her and asking her for advice or getting comforted by her, I need to comfort her. And I need to be strong for her. And you know, this was hard for me, and it still is, because I always didn't want to think of losing my mom. I never wanted to think about this. And eventually she's still around, you know, thank God, and you know, for a long time, Ya Rab, she gets better. But I sort of feel like I did already. And I think, you know, there's always a transition that the universe or God prepares you for the departure of people and the ones that we love. And then they prepare you in a way that you grow, and then you realize the solution. For you, the solution was to share, to write, to post. Like you said, you were not talking to anyone, but you were actually talking to someone. You were talking through your Instagram posts and through your, that was your way of communicating with the universe. We're getting some great comments here, and please, everyone, feel free to open up this, you know, a discussion, or if you want to comment or something, or if you want to ask us any questions. You know, we have a comment from Aya. A great session, ladies. Very motivational indeed. Hope to meet you both soon. Keep pushing. You know, the reason why we're sharing our stories, and the reason why we're coming out there is to basically encourage everyone to use their voice. Your voice is super strong. Whether you use your voice at home with your children or your family or your peers at work or your neighbors, or your you know, your students in a classroom, your voice is strong, and your story is very powerful. So don't be shy to use your story, and don't think like I used to think before, oh, you know, my story is not really heroic or whatever, because you'll never know who you might inspire. Let me go through the, I want to thank both of you. Everyone is thanking us, and no, really, we're thanking you for actually attending today. You know, it's brilliant. But if you have any questions, please do. I have a question, Lara, in fact, for you. How did your family take everything around? That's, you know.
That's actually something that I wanted to talk about. So I'm the youngest. And I have two amazing older siblings, Faisal and Farah. And I think honestly, what we did as a family was, you have two options when something like this happens. Either each member of the family like dissipates and goes into their own world, and it's just the ship is wrecked, or you take turns in taking care of each other and be honest about how you feel, So we've opened up, we've had sessions, we've literally had sessions where my brother would sit us down and be like, you know what, today we're going to talk about this. How is everyone feeling? And we would sit down and we would cry and we would be open. But who else would be, you know, the right people to go to in such a situation? I had my brother say just the other day, yesterday, he was saying, you know, I'm okay with us crying about it. I'm okay with us being sad about it. But I'm not okay with us giving up. And he would go beyond measure to achieve his goals in life. And he would do the same in terms of seeing us do that as well. And that's how it is. You know, that's how it is. You need to understand that each one goes through their own grief process alone. And mine was very different from my siblings, and one is expressive, the other isn't. It's different, and you need to respect those journeys, and it's complicated and it's not easy. But at the end of the day, this continuous mindset of we will not give up. We have a choice in this, understanding that you have a choice to come as a family together, to rebuild that ship over time with patience every day, in and out. I think that's the key. And we do it all knowing that our mother is Taj Rasna, right? Like the queen of our hearts, knowing that.
ربنا يخليها لكم. Yeah. Look, like you said, Lara, not everyone is the same and everyone reacts differently. So I just want to let you know as participants and as audience that storytelling publicly might not be the thing for everyone. A lot of people are very private. A lot of people are very reluctant to share their story. However, share your story with yourself. Sit down and write a diary. By the way, diaries are not old-fashioned. I still keep a diary. I still keep my thoughts on a piece of paper because it makes you feel like you've offloaded that experience, or you've offloaded your emotions. And once you write it down, even if it's bullet points, it doesn't have to be a novel.
Right.
You'll feel better already. You don't have to write. You can speak to yourself. And by the way, it's not crazy. I do it all the time. Talk to yourself, you know, go out and take a walk, you know, safely, of course. Just do what makes you feel serene and connect with yourself. So yeah, I think it's 4:50 now, and I would like to see if Noha would have any questions, or if we have any questions here.
Well, we have one question from Hafza Batul, and she says, basically, she talks about, you know, vulnerability, the power of vulnerability and storytelling, and which enables everyone to gain courage in sharing their stories as well. So first of all, she's thanking you for showing vulnerability today, and she finds this very inspirational for everyone else in terms of going out there with their stories. But she's also asking people who do not have access to platforms such as She's Arab or others to share their stories, how can we convey our side, and where do we start?
Okay, I would like to take this, if you don't mind, Lara, just quickly. First of all, the platform that I launched, or the Instagram page, because honestly, it's not a platform. She is Arab is a platform. Human to Human is just an Instagram page and the stories I put on LinkedIn. Honestly, you can always reach out to me and you share your story, because it's not about me sharing others' stories. It's about you writing your own story. So it's similar to Humans of New York, but it's Humans of the World. So if you have a story, please reach out to me, write your story. I'll help you write it if you want. If you don't feel like you can write something, and we'll copyright it together and we'll edit it. But there's so many platforms out there. And actually, by the way, why don't you start your own page? I mean, you don't have to join platforms. You can just do it in a very simple form, like Lara started on an Instagram page, like I started on an Instagram page, and now you can even write articles on LinkedIn. I mean, there's so many things. If you want to start something, you can do it. You can start it in the simplest forms, and eventually it will grow if this is what you want.
Just one more question here, Mariam, and also I'd like to get both your perspectives in terms of, okay, a lot of women we know from many studies, shy away from talking about their lives, their achievements, their passions, and, we're not good at really promoting ourselves. And so the idea of going out on Instagram, LinkedIn, and, talking about our story may be a little bit daunting for some. So what's your advice for those women, in terms of how to get started? What kind of stories can they share? How can they start to think about this?
Okay, sure. Honestly, let me tell you something about all of this. It's not easy going out there and sharing your story, because the world will not take it all the time as you'd like it to. So when I shared my story about my father, I had a comment of why I wasn't doing things for cancer patients. And when I found myself in that position, I was, and I reflected on it, honestly, that's when I was taught that everything that another person says is quite a reflection of themselves and not of me. And I needed to understand that if something took a great deal of courage, this is actually something Lady Gaga taught me, that I would have to go about tackling that thing step by step with small acts of courage. So you don't need to figure it out all at once. I didn't even know I would be here. Literally, I just did it one step at a time. I started off with one video, and then I started off with one post, and then one talk, and then the one after that. This is how it happens. It takes time. It takes time, and it needs courage and understanding that you and your story and your self-worth depends on how you see yourself. It's tough out there in the world. People would not like what you say. Many of the times they will be judgmental, they will be hurtful. But then, you know what, there are other people who are going to come with tears in their eyes, and they're going to say, you changed my life. And those are my audience. Those people are my audience. Those are the people that I come out here and I do these things for, because I wouldn't have been able to do that until I saw those women and men do it right in front of me, and have that trust in themselves, even though it isn't easy. But then going out there, I could see it. And once I saw it, I could imagine that I can become it. So don't wait. Don't wait until, you're imagining that you have this massive courage and you're going to be able to do it. Just take one step at a time. One step at a time. That's my greatest advice. And trust yourself.
Absolutely. Noha, my take on this, and this was so beautifully put, Lara, but I would take it from a different angle. I would take it from more of an older angle, if you want, because now at my age, sometimes we get misunderstood as women in leadership and women in business. You might be wanting to share your story, or wanting to give a little bit of personal branding to yourself, and then there's always going to be a love and hate relationship. Sometimes others will be jealous and they would think, oh, there she goes again promoting herself. And then sometimes you will get those, the ones that are genuine and support you. Now, from my experience, there's a thin line between over promoting yourself and doing it elegantly and eloquently. So what I've learned is that your post needs to have a takeaway. So it needs to not just promote yourself in the sense that I am great, look at me, and whatever, and my achievements, or however. If you're speaking at a conference, give the audience that are reading your post a giveaway, or something to think about. Engage them. Give kudos to somebody else. So support other women. and don't shy away every now and then to actually post something about another woman or another person, because posting about other people as well will do two things. First of all, it will encourage others to celebrate each other's achievements and success, because we tend to not support other women, and that's the one mistake that we do. Ladies, there's space for everyone. So please, there is space for everyone. There's enough for everyone.
Absolutely.
One. Two, it will make you, it will position you better. So instead of making yourself look like you're egoistic or that you're focusing too much on yourself, by sharing others' posts, you would give the message across that you're confident with yourself. And eventually you are actually sharing something about yourself as well. So you would share a note about how that person and what they said resonated with you. But Noha, there is a question that I would like to answer, please, because it's a very important question and it resonates with me a lot. And thank you so much, Dana, for asking that question. What do you both think about storytelling when it comes to more sensitive issues like abuse, hard divorce, bad parenting, and others? I think I'm think so strongly about this topic. Like I said, in 2018, so there's like a shift in my storytelling in my life. Pre-2018 and post-2018. I never liked to share my story with anyone. I never liked to say I was raised without my father. I hadn't seen him until I was 10 years old. I didn't know who he was or where he was, and I was constantly playing the catch up with my family, because whenever I asked where's my dad, they wouldn't want to answer. So I felt a bit like, not ashamed, but I felt that why am I sharing my story with anyone? And I realized when I did is it didn't belittle me. It actually strengthened me. And it made me feel that, you know what, get over it. So what? It all depends on how you feel about this. If you are ready to face the world and having people approach you and ask you more questions, because once you open that door, you can't close it. So if you feel that you're ready to talk about a bad divorce or bad parenting or a bad childhood or a certain abuse situation, go out there and face it with an open heart and an open mind. But I would say an open mind more than an open heart, because once you open that door, there's gonna be haters and there's gonna be supporters. So it all depends on you and whether you're, but I feel like in 2020 and with COVID-19, we're ready for that transformation, Noha. There's so much growth happening on a global level and on a human level that we would love to hear these stories, and people would actually sympathize and resonate and maybe encourage them to open up about their own stories.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, we all know too well, we've been reading the stories globally and hearing the Sec Gen of the UN talking about, the rise in cases of domestic abuse and also child abuse. So again, I think here again, the power of storytelling to encourage people who are going through these difficult times to step up is more important than ever. And I don't know, Lara, if you want to also.
I just like to add one more thing that I think is very important. I've been reading a book called Becoming Supernatural by Dr. Joe, and my biggest realization is that I am not defined by my story. I can rewrite my story. So when people label me as the girl who lost her father at 22 to cancer or whatever, and she uses his name and how she presents herself and things like that, I realized that all the labels, are just, they're trivial. And what's really important is the meaning that you give behind those labels. So as Lara, as Mariam, as Noha, as everyone here, without your labels, you have infinite value as a soul. as a human soul, you have infinite value. And so when you share your story, don't think that it defines you, whether it's a divorce or, you know, it's a domestic abuse, whether it's nothing has the right to hold you in that sense. And you have the power to continue rewriting, but you need to be the owner of that. So I really hope everyone who's been through something that's very difficult and challenging, just know that you can continuously rewrite your story and let go of those emotions, because emotions are, they're recreations of the past. You need to be open to new emotions, new healthy emotions that can help you create a future that looks nothing like the past. Honor where you come from, but know that you are already with infinite value without any of these labels.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, unfortunately, we are coming to the end of the webinar because of time. But honestly, I mean, what a beautiful way to end this day. I'm personally so inspired, and I have to say that I'm a writer as well. And for many years, I thought, and I'll be very vulnerable here, that I wasn't good enough. And what helped me move on is really, as Lara said, and as Mariam said several times in this session, letting go of the past and embracing the future, believing in ourselves, and moving forward, and writing this down, or just even telling that story and believing it, and replacing those whatever those limiting beliefs or thoughts may be, is always liberating, I would say. So thank you both very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
And yes, and everyone have a lovely day and happy Ramadan.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Ramadan Kareem.
Ramadan Kareem.
Thank you. And thank you, She is Arab.
Yes, thank you.
For being here.
Take care.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.